Thank you very much. And first, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to, thank you. So I'm going to talk about applications of optimal control and sub-Riemannian geometry. In particular, how we can apply these notions to the study of population of shapes. So first, here are examples of populations of shapes, so 3 types of populations. And what I'm going to talk about is how we can use sub-Riemannian geometry to study one population of shape. So when I say study one population of shapes, it doesn't mean, like for instance, the rabbit head here. It doesn't mean study individually each subject that we have and then compare the analysis that we have. It means directly study the set of objects that we have, and in particular, study directly the differences between 2 individuals. So in order to do that, the idea is that we have a set of shapes, so rabbit head. We assume that we have a manifold structure on it, and the goal is going to put a nice metric on this manifold so that this metric will measure how close or far 2 shapes are in a relevant manner. Of course, we have to define what it means, a relevant manner. The idea is also to define metrics so that there are geodesics that are meaningful, for instance, from a biological point of view. So that when you go from one shape to another, it tells you something and you get information that you were interested in. So the basic, the core idea here is how we can compare 2 shapes, how we can define a trajectory from one shape to another, and how can we build them so that they are interesting. In order to do that, we'll use an idea that was first introduced by Darcy Thompson in his book on growth and form in 1917. The idea is that in order to study the differences between 2 shapes, so here 2 skull heads like that, the idea is to study how you have to transform the first shape in order to make it look like the other one. And when I say transform, it means how you have to deform it. So what is the best deformorphism that allows to go from one shape to another? So this is intuition. And in order to formalize that, we need first to specify what is a shape. There are thousands of definitions of the notion of shapes in mathematics, in computer vision, or in medical imaging. There are, depending on the analysis that we want to perform. And here we'll use a definition that is adapted to the study via diffeomorphisms. It's a definition of shapes that was formalized by Sylvain Aguilière, who did his PhD in the LGLL with Emmanuel Trella and Alain Trouvé. We'll say that a space is a shape space on RD if it is a manifold such that the group of diffeomorphisms of RD can act on it and can act continuously. And we also assume that this action can be differentiated. So basically what it means that you have a group of diffeomorphisms, can be all the smooth diffeomorphisms, or it can be a subset of it, even not smooth. And you have your shape space. So here it's denoted by M because I took this picture from this book, but in the rest it's going to be O. Okay, so here M equals O. So basically what it means that if you have one shape, so here it's like a brain shape, and you have a diffeomorphism, you can apply a diffeomorphism to your shape and you obtain another shape. So by applying diffeomorphisms to one shape, you can jump from one shape to another. So you know how a diffeomorphism can transform one shape. As I said, we are not interested in jumping from one shape to another, but we're interested in trajectories. So you want to know how we can go from one shape to another, and we want to put a metric defined via this. We want that some trajectories are geodesic for a certain metric. So in order to do that, instead of studying directly a group of diffeomorphisms, we'll consider trajectories of diffeomorphisms. And the trajectories that we'll consider are what we call large deformations that are defined as flows of time-varying vector field. So given a nice set of vector field, we'll not specify here, We'll consider trajectories of diffeomorphisms bits like that, starting at identity and satisfying this temporal differential equation. Then you can show that under some assumption that this is a diffeomorphisms, and this is what we will call a large deformation. It's going to be the final diffeomorphism. So if we go back to the previous picture, we can add a third layer, which is the layer of vector fields. From a trajectory of vector fields in red here, you can integrate the flow equation. You obtain a trajectory of diffeomorphisms starting at identity. And then you can apply at each time this diffeomorphism to a source shape, getting this way a trajectory in your shape space. So with this construction, you can go from a trajectory in your space of vector fields. So you set a space of vector field that needs to satisfy certain properties. That's not the object here. And then you can obtain trajectories in your shape space. So you can walk in your shape space. Sylvain Guillère showed in his PhD, in fact, that under some assumption, if the space of vector field here is a Hilbert space, the inner product that you have here allows to build a metric on your shape space. And besides, this is in general a sub-Riemannian metric, because the only directions where you can go from a shape is only the directions given by applying this vector field to your shape. So this is a sub-Riemannian construction, and this allows to have very nice results. In particular, you can show that geodesic exists. You can parameterize normal geodesics by an inner variable called the initial momentum. And you can, for instance, perform statistics if you want to study how far all the population is from this source brane. You can say, OK, I'm going to compute all the geodesics to all the population that I have, and I can perform some statistical study because I can parameterize the way to go from this source brane to others by a variable that is in the cotangent space, so it's a vector space. So you can do a lot of stuff like that. The only, however, for each, when you are in a shape, like here or here, the way you can move it, it doesn't really depend on the shape because it's always given by the same vector space. So whichever shape that you are in, whichever point that you are in the shape space, the directions in which we can go is applying a space of vector fields that is always the same. However, I'm going to present now that an example where this is not really satisfying. But keep in mind that in general it works a lot, but sometimes it's not exactly what you want to obtain. For instance, if you want to transform with these ideas, you want to study how you can go from this image to this image. Not exactly there. Of course, we are studying the relaxed problem because in general we cannot reach this one. But, and it's not exactly what we want because in general we have noisy data. So we are studying the relaxed problem and we measure how well we arrive close to here with the L2 distance in the space of images. So if you want, usually what is used in practice is here RKHS. And I will present a result when I take scalar Gaussian RKHS, so a type of vector field that is usually used, so it's not a very restrictive hypothesis. And I'm going to present the trajectory of images that I obtain, the best trajectories that I obtain with this. So most of the difference is going to occur here because it's the same, except that this structure is rotated. So look here, you see what is the trajectory that I obtained. So of course, this is not the trajectory that we wanted. The trajectory here, what we were expecting were some rotation in this area. We were expecting that, but that's not what the algorithm gives you because it's not the optimal result given the structure that you have put on your space. So sometimes what you would like to have, it's a sub-Riemannian structure, so ways you can move on your shape space, not given by a set space of vector fields, but you want to say, okay, here I would prefer to have a rotation centered here, moving only this local structure. So when you have an additional prior, you would like to be able to incorporate it in your deformation model. In particular, here, if you look at your rabbit heads here, what you can imagine of this rabbit head is that one thing how they can be transformed is by changing the size of the ears. And of course, if you think about that, you will not allow the same deformations if your rabbit head is like that or if your rabbit head is like that. Because here you say, okay, the only motions are parallel to these lines like that and located here, while here it's located there. So the distribution should take into account the point where you are on your shape space. So many models have been built with this idea of incorporating a structure in large deformations by putting some structure in the space of vector fields. So forcing those vector fields to be a combination of a few vector fields that you can control and that can be interpreted. So all these frameworks built different types of generators adapted to different types of problems. But to our knowledge, there were not unified settings that allowed to define easily complex generators of vector field, so that these generators evolve in a nice way during the integration of the flow, and such that some basic mathematical properties are ensured, such as existence of the flow and existence of geodesic trajectories. So this is what we intended to do, and we defined for that a new structure that we called deformation modules. A deformation module is a structure that is capable of generating vector fields that are of a particular and chosen type, and these vector fields will depend on the geometrical state of the object that you're studying. So basically, if you want to allow the ears of your rabbit to get bigger or smaller, the idea is to define generators of vector field that do that, make the ears bigger or smaller, but that localize localize the vector field so that they act only on the ears. So typically, the vector fields that are generated will be parameterized by two types of variables. The first one is a geometric variable that will localize, for instance, the vector field. So here, that will say my ears are here, but in this case, my ears are here and here. So this is a geometrical parameter that will ensure that the distribution is relevant with respect to the shape we are in. And another variable will say how much you want to use the possible vector fields. So if you say, OK, one ear is here, a control variable is going to say, OK, now make it bigger, smaller, or very bigger. So this is intuition of deformation modules. And I will now give a more specific definition. A deformation module is a fivefold. And I will explain via this diagram how they interact. So as I said, the idea is to build vector fields. So a deformation module is going to be first defined by a field generator, which is a function that can generate vector fields. As I said, this vector field will be parameterized by two variables. One is a geometric one, and it's called the geometrical descriptor. And I will denote by O like that spaces of geometrical descriptors in the rest of the talk. And the second variable is a control variable, really in the sense of control theory. And I will denote by H the space of controls in the rest of the talk. H is a vector space. So the field generator is a function that goes to this product space and that returns a vector field. So the field generator is really the way to introduce some structure in the vector field that you want to build, because it will say what are the type of vector fields that you will allow. Then, as I said, the geometrical descriptor will call for the geometry. So if you remember the ears, if the ears are moved for any reason, you want the geometry to follow the fact that the geometry is moving. So you need to define how this geometrical variable is going to follow a deformation of the ambient space. This will be defined by an infinitesimal action that applies vector fields to geometrical descriptors. So in fact, the space of geometrical descriptors is a shape space in the sense that I've defined previously. So it can be transformed by diffeomorphisms. And by differentiating this action with respect to diffeomorphisms at identity, you obtain an action of the infinitesimal action. So the infinitesimal action takes vector fields and can apply them to a geometrical descriptor, giving an infinitesimal speed. Note that the infinitesimal action here takes in input any kind of vector fields that are regular enough, not only those that are generated by the field generator. So you can move the geometrical descriptor by something else than the vector fields that it generated itself. And then a cost function specifies how much it costs to use a particular value of geometrical descriptor and cost. And so this is how you're going to penalize certain trajectories compared to others. So let me give a very simple, simple example of deformation module. So suppose that, okay, you're studying this image, and you know that the only way it can be transformed is, if you can see, you have two dots here, two little crosses, blue crosses here. I don't know if you can see them. Yeah? Ça va? It's okay. You can see. Ouais. Suppose that you know that the only way it can be, the only fields that can act are sum of two local translations. So for instance, centered at these two blue dots and with these vectors, and here in green is an example of local translation. I localize my translations by Gaussian kernel. So this is an example of vector field. How is this vector field parameterized? It has 2 points and 2 vectors. If you know your prior is that you have 2 local translations. The geometry is going to be the location of these local translations. So the geometry is going to be coded by these 2 points. So these 2 points will correspond to the geometrical descriptor. While the way you want to use these 2 translations is the control variable. So the control variable here is going to be the 2 vectors. So one way to build a deformation module that corresponds to our prior, which is vector fields are only sum of 2 local translations, is to build a deformation module where the space of geometrical descriptor is the space of 2 points in R2, so R2 times R2. The space of controls is the space of 2 vectors, vectors of translation, R2 times R2. The field generator takes in input 2 points, 2 vectors, and returns the sum of the 2 local translations. Now you have to define the infinitesimal action. An easy way to act for a vector field to act on set of 2 points is just to apply the vector fields to the 2 points. It seems reasonable. And you can take for the cost, for instance, the square norm of the generated vector field. This is one way to build a deformation module that generates sums of 2 local translations. For this choice of geometrical descriptor in blue and controls in red, you see in green the vector fields that you generated. If you change the geometrical descriptor like that, here is a new vector field. And if you change the control, you have a new vector field. So all these vector fields are generated by the deformation module that I defined and they correspond to different values of geometrical descriptor and controls. Now, if you assume that you have an additional prior on your vector field, you know that it's a sum of 2 local translations, but you, in addition, know that the directions are in opposite direction, parallel to the line between the 2 points. So you know that they are like this. So here is an example of vector field that would be generated. In this case, the vectors of the translation are no longer control variables, because if you give the 2 points, you cannot choose them freely. They have to be in opposite direction and parallel to the line between the 2 points. So in this case, the deformation module that I built previously is not satisfying. It doesn't choose the whole prior that we have. A better way is to say, okay, given my 2 points here, I build these purple vectors. That's just a function of my geometrical descriptors. I can build the sum of the 2 local translations. And now I have a scalar variable to which I will multiply this vector field. And this scalar variable is going to be my control variable, saying how much I want to use this generated vector field. So if I want to have a more contracted field, I'm going to have a scalar bigger to 1. like this. If I want to have something dilatating in the other direction, I'm going to take a negative scalar. So I can build a new deformation module, and incorporating this additional prior, in this case, the geometrical descriptors are still going to be sets of 2 points, but the control variable now is going to be a scalar variable telling how much I want to use the possible dilatating, contracting field. So note that the vector field that can be generated by this second deformation module could have been generated by the previous one. But here, I forced to have only this type of fields because I have an additional prior. So like this, we can build complicated, with this idea, we can build complicated deformation modules incorporating complex priors. In addition, you can combine 2 deformation modules. So assume that you have 2 different priors. You know that your shape, for instance, can be transformed by a local scaling. So you can build a deformation module generating local scaling. And there is also a small translation or a local rotation or any kind of other deformation that you can imagine. There's an easy way to build a new deformation module that will combine the 2 priors. Combining, it means that you know that you can have a local scaling and a local rotation. The satisfying way to combine these 2 is to allow a sum of local scaling and local rotation. So this is what the way to define combination of deformation modules. New space of geometrical descriptor is going to just be the product of the 2 spaces. So you combine the 2 geometrical information that you have. You combine the 2 ways of playing with the possible generating vector field. And the field generator will take into input a geometrical descriptor, which is now a couple of 2, a control, which is a couple of 2, and sum the generating vector field. The infinitesimal action takes vector fields and apply them to the couples of the 2 geometrical descriptors, and it just applies component-wise. So it applies the field to the first component and to the second component. Note now that if we combine the 2 by saying how a geometrical descriptor and the control can act back on a geometrical descriptor, so you build a field and you apply it back, each one is going to fill the total vector field, not only the field that it generated via its field generator, but it's going to fill the whole field, so the sum. And so in this way, each component will fill all the transformation on the ambient space, not only the transformation that it is creating. So with this idea, you can build deformation modules that are very complex by just combining simple deformation modules, and you can combine them as many times as you want. There is no restriction on that. So with this idea, you can build, as I said, complex deformation modules, and that incorporate complex prior at the level of vector fields. But as I said, we want to build large deformations that are built as flows of trajectory of vector fields. So this is a space of vector fields. If we want to build large deformations with deformation modules, we will consider trajectories of vector fields here that can be generated by the field generator. So we set a deformation module. We suppose that we have a deformation module and we want to build modular large deformations. We do not have to specify now the trajectory of vector fields that we want to follow, but we have to say a trajectory of geometrical descriptor and control, so that when we apply the field generator, we obtain a trajectory of vector field, and then we want to integrate the flow. So we need to specify what are the trajectories of geometrical descriptor and control that we'll consider, that will allow to obtain reasonable trajectories of vector field. We'll consider trajectories of geometrical descriptor and control such that at each time the speed of the geometrical descriptor is equal to the application on itself via the infinitesimal action of the vector field that is created by itself and the control via the field generator. So it means that we'll consider trajectories of control and geometrical descriptors such that at each time the speed of the geometrical descriptor is equal to the application on it of the vector field that is generated by the geometrical descriptor and the control at time. So we consider trajectories such that you have a feedback loop acting back on the geometrical descriptor to give its speed. We also assume that the energy defined as the integral of the cost is finite. So like this, we obtain from a trajectory of geometrical descriptor and control that satisfies these properties, we obtain, by applying the field generator, a trajectory of vector field. Now the question is, can we integrate this trajectory? In order to do that, we need to assume an additional property, which is that our deformation module satisfies what we call the uniform embedding condition, which is that there exists a Hilbert space of vector field, such that all the vector field that can be generated belong to this space, and their square norm is controlled by the cost. So that when you control the cost, you control, in a sense, the L2 norm of the generated trajectory of vector field. Then, one interesting fact is that this property is stable under combination. So if you want to build a complex deformation modules that satisfy these properties, you can just build it as combination of simple deformation modules that satisfy this combination, and automatically the compound deformation module will satisfy that. So if you satisfy this condition, you can integrate the flow. You can integrate the flow of this trajectory of vector field, and you obtain what I will call a modular large deformation. So the diffeomorphism that you obtain is a modular large deformation. Besides, you can show that the final, at each time, the value of the geometrical descriptor satisfying this equation is equal to the application of the diffeomorphism at this time to the initial geometrical descriptor. So you really move on your space of geometrical descriptor by applying the diffeomorphism that you built. And in addition, your whole trajectory is only defined by the initial geometrical descriptor and the trajectory of control, which is L2 in H. Then you can integrate this equation and you can show that everything is satisfied. So let me show an example of large deformations that can be built by the deformation module that I defined earlier, and that was generating contracting and dilating field. As they also build vector fields and diffeomorphism, I can apply the deformation that is built to this image. So we can see how this image is transported by the deformation modules generated by these 2 points and a trajectory of control that I chose. So here the control is scalar, as I said. And let me show what we have for a constant control equal to 1. So here is the integrated trajectory. So you can see that the points here follow the evolution of the ambient space, and because they relatively to the image, they stay at the same point in a sense. And if you choose another trajectory, positive scalar and then a negative one, you can go backward. Now the field is dilating. So in these trajectories, the 2 points here, as I said, are only following a trajectory. The only speed that they can have is the application on themselves of the field that they can generate. So they cannot go everywhere they want. Like here, they have to go like that. You cannot have any kind of behavior. And it means that you only allow a certain subspace in the tangent space. And in fact, you build a sub-Riemannian structure on your space of geometrical descriptor. So indeed, with this morphism of fiber bundles that combines the field generator and the infinitesimal action, you have a morphism between this cross product and the tangent space, And you can show that this defines a sub-Riemann structure on O, which is not sub-Riemann structure on O. And besides, the distance, so that coming from this sub-Riemann distance, is equal to the infimum, the square distance is equal to the infimum cost for horizontal trajectories. Okay. You can show, under some assumptions, that geodesics exist if the distance is finite. And if you consider the relaxed problem, you can parameterize, so relaxed problem where you don't want to reach exactly one point, but you allow to arrive around this point, but minimizing the energy. You can show that minimizing trajectories of controls can be parameterized by an initial momentum belonging to the cotangent space and satisfying this differential equation, so with a Hamiltonian framework. So here we built a structure that is called deformation modules that allow to build a nice sub-Riemann structure on the set of geometrical descriptors, so that the geodesics characterize how easy it is to go from one point to another by taking directions that use only the prior that we have. So if we know that we have contracting field, we use only this type of behavior, and we can measure how easy it is to go from one point to another using only this kind of behavior. So let me show how we can use this in order to match shapes. So let's shapes, images, meshes, curves, whatever you have in mind. So suppose that you have two shapes in a shape space, F, and you want to match two shapes. So you want to study the best trajectory going from F0 to F1 using large deformations that can be only generated with your deformation module, so that using only the deformation prior that you have. The idea will be, of course, to minimize this kind of functional, which is a sum of two terms, the cost of the trajectory that you will consider, and an attachment term that will measure how well your transported source shape is close to 1. So let me define. Q here starts at A. It's such that QH is a horizontal for the sub-Riemann structure you have on M. And you transport then, once you have QH, you have a deformation, and you can transport your source shape. No, here it's, no, okay. You can transport your source shape at each time by the deformation generated by your geometrical descriptor and your control. Here you have two strategies. The first, if you want to find what is the best way to transform F0 into F1 using your priors. The first approach, which is the correct one, in a sense, is to minimize this. And in fact, if you want to minimize this, you can build following, I will not detail here, but you can build a sub-Riemann metric on the product space here, O times F. So you won't have directly a sub-Riemann structure on F, because you need a geometrical information is given by the elements in O, but you will have a sub-Riemann structure on the product, and you can define geodesics similar to the framework that I presented earlier. And then the minimizers here, given an initial point A, are going to be parameterized by initial momentum in the cotangent of the product space. So this is the first way, is really minimizing this, this functional. The second approach is saying that we don't want to minimize this because, for instance, F is too high dimension, so it's not interesting to have an initial momentum belonging to this space. The dimension is too big, it's too redundant, so it's not interesting. And we think that the geometric information given by the elements in O are enough to study the problem that we have. So in this case, you can study only the geodesics built, that can be built with M, so parameterized by initial momentum that is only in the cotangent of your space of geometrical descriptor, so in general, very low dimension, and then search among them how you can transform f0 into f1. So you don't really minimize that. You rewrite this depending, instead of a trajectory of control, you use only an initial geometrical descriptor, and you look when you shoot in with the sub-Riemann structure of M, when you shoot, how it gives, what kind of trajectories it gives you in the space F. In general, they can give very different results, and I give you a very, very simple one example to show how different the behavior can be. So here you have two shapes. The first shape is in blue, so you have points A and B. And the second shape is in black, A prime, B prime. You suppose that you want to match A into A prime, B into B prime. So B is not supposed to move. And you want to do that with one translation that you impose to be centered at A. So you have the first shape is 2 points, and the deformation module here is a deformation module with a geometrical descriptor that is 1 point, control 1 vector, and the fields that are generated are one local translation. We localize by a small Gaussian that is, let's say, approximately this size. If you use the first approach, so you really minimize the whole functional like that, here is the trajectory that you obtain. So in red is the control, so the vector of the translation. And you can see that the direction of this control is moving so that it goes around the point that is not supposed to move and tries as much as it can to bring the other point to the target. The other arrows are the momenta at each time. So here it's really a sub-Riemannian trajectory, trying to go around what is not supposed to move and trying to bring the point that is supposed to move as much as you can. If you take the other approach, you will consider only geodesics that can be created by one translation, so in the space of 1 point, and you use these geodesics in order to transport the 2 points where you want. And nope. If it's working, yep. The geodesics. So here what you have is the geodesics of this point, and then you see how it can transport the other one. Of course, here the geodesics of the set of 1 point is going to be still a straight line, so you will not be able to have a change of direction of the control variable. So here you can see that even though the sub-Riemannian structure doesn't seem too different in the sense that you always allow a space of dimension 2. You can always move with one translation. The set of geodesics are really different. Sometimes the small set of geodesics, so the one parameterized by only initial momentum in this, is going to be sufficient, and sometimes it will not. So this is a question, very interesting question, and that is not understood at all. Here. I will present 2 applications. How long? Okay, maybe one. We'll see. I will present, however, how it can be useful to use a small set of geodesics. So the one that looks not very interesting for one translation because it gives only straight translations. But sometimes you have geometrical descriptors in your deformation module that catch the geometry well enough so that the geodesics are interesting, and besides the fact that you reduce considerably the dimension of the set of geodesics can be very interesting. So I will present an application of this in image reconstruction. So image reconstruction, what it means that you have an operator that takes in input images and returns data. So here's for the ray transform. I think I have 10 angles here. So you set an angle and you say, okay, I have these angles, and I integrate following all these angles, and I obtain a profile that you can see here. Image reconstruction is, okay, now I know my operator, I know my data, what is the original image? Of course, in general, it's very bad defined, so you cannot go back. The inverse is not defined. So you need to add some regularization in order to have a chance to find the good image. The prior can come as a template image, for instance, this one, and you say, okay, I know that I'm not too far from this. That's a usual idea in image reconstruction. And here I will add an additional prior. I will assume that I have an idea of how I can move this image. So for instance, so I will use a template image I0 as a prior to reconstruct from data. And I suppose that I know a deformation module that can transform I0. Then I will try to find the best geodesic parameterized by M, not the product space, but only M, so that I minimize this functional, which is a term of a cost functional, so the energy, how much it costs to transform my image, and a data attachment term, which will compare. So you have your image, you have the geodetic trajectory. Integrating the flow equation, you obtain a diffeomorphism. Then you can apply this diffeomorphism to your image. And by applying the operator T, you obtain a new data to which you will compare the data that you have. And you want to lower the difference here. So in the case that this is my template, this is the ground truth, what I want to reconstruct. This is my data. And I assume, in practice, you don't know the ground truth, but here we assume at least that we know how to move. So I will take a combination of two deformation modules. One creates contracting dilating field, as I presented earlier, and the other one creates local rotation around this area. And then I minimize the functional that I presented here, and here is the trajectory that we obtain. So we obtain something that is relatively okay. Of course, if you use unstructured deformations, so the framework that I presented at the beginning, you will not have the rotation occurring here because, as you show, it's going to do something that is not relevant. The interest here is that as you the space on which you look for the good solution is very small, you can have good reconstructions even though you have very, very small data. So for instance, if you use the same, so red transform, but with angles that are very close to the vertical line, so going like that. If you use TV reconstruction, this is the kind of result that you have, so it's not really satisfying. And if you know that you have a template image, you can use L2 TV, which is a total variation reconstruction, saying that your solution is not too far from this, but not too far in the L2 distance. And here is what you obtain. So once again, it's not really satisfying. Now the idea is to say my solution is not too far from this, but not too far in the modular deformation sense. So I build, I assume that I know, that's an extremely strong prior, of course, but we assume that we have this prior, that we know the adapted deformation modules, and we can, here is the reconstruction that I get for the same data. So even though I don't have information about what is happening here, as what on the data I can see the type of deformation only here, it says, okay, the only way to get this kind of strange thing in the data is to have this deformation. So it reconstructs in areas that it doesn't see because I constrained the space of solution. In a sense here, the geometrical descriptors, so the deformation module that I took, has a geometry that is enough to characterize the differences between the two images. So even though we don't have a subrimand structure on the space of images, the intuition that I did not prove at all and need to be formalized, but the idea that I feel is that you have a subrimand structure on the space of differences between your images. The points that you put here are enough to catch the differences. So I guess I will not go further. If you go back to, if you want to study a population, a whole population, because here I showed only two images. As I said, you can build a metric on the product space. using the same ideas as previously. And in fact, like this, you can compute Frechet means in this space. And this allows to compute means of population and study variations. So here is a mean of several rabbit heads you can obtain like that. And just as an example, the type of, the type of deformation that you can go that bring one rabbit head to another one. And with this kind of modular deformation, you can characterize and study how different your rabbit heads are given the structure that you incorporate in the study of the population. So keep in mind here that with the idea of sub-Riemann structure, we were able to incorporate a structure that comes directly from the shapes. This is what was very new. And to allow some, to manage the variability with this structure with the notion of controls. And so this was an attempt to go to this direction. Started with Ulf Grinder, said, is it possible to mechanize human intuitive understanding of biological picture that typically exhibit a lot of variability, but also possess characteristic structure? So our goal now is to be able to understand more characteristic structure given more complex data. So in particular, we don't know exactly what is the deformation module, but to build the deformation module adapted to characteristic structure. So I guess I will stop here. And thank you for your attention. No. You can. It depends. I mean, if you you can consider one connected component of your shape space. So in this case, yes. But
when you move, you can only move from between two.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
But it is very difficult to characterize, a priori. So as I understand, most of the time you create your own space of shape by making diffeomorphism from one, like by deforming one particular shape. But if you have different shapes, how to understand? Is it possible with this technique to understand if they are diffeomorphic or not?
If they are diffeomorphic or not, usually that's not really the question.
They will have an infinite distance, I think, but.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm not sure. So your question would be how you would characterize.
For instance, if you have two states of brain as you have,
yes.
Are they diffeomorphic?
In general, no, because you have noisy data, so no. You can study the attachment term. If it's super high, it means that it's really not diffeomorphic, but I didn't study this kind of questions right now. Sorry, yeah.
Is there any other question? Yes? So you mentioned you had this UEC condition and then on the product space, it's fine. Is it ever a restriction? Like generally, all of the objects you study have this UEC, or do you have to worry about?
You have to worry about, especially in the way you define the cost, because like if we go back to the okay, so you have to worry about, but usually it's not a big problem. I'd say. Like here, for instance, for the contracting and dilating field, if you put a cost that only depends on the control that you put and not on the size of the vectors, you will not have any link between the norm of your cost, the norm of your control, and the norm of the vector field. Because if you build here these vectors very, very big, you can have very low control with a very big vector field. So in this case, you have to be careful. But if you build, even though it doesn't satisfy the UEC everywhere, if you have locally this satisfied for reasonable, like for instance, if you, for an initial point here you can lower this condition and you still have a reasonable thing. But this is really to ensure that you don't have explosion and things like that. That you really control what is happening by controlling the cost. So it's a balance to find.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.